We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you is Thursday, July 10th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Kwon Ju-yeon.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, and Park Gi-yoon is also with us.
Thanks for having me.
And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So it's Thursday, which means we're going to begin with our keyword news, where we look at a story that has been gaining traction over the past 24 hours. Today's keyword is heat illness. Amid the sweltering summer, cases of heat-related illnesses in Seoul have surged compared to last year. According to the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency on Wednesday, more than 200 people across the country were treated for heat-related illnesses on Tuesday alone at the 516 emergency rooms nationwide. This brings the total number of heat-related illness cases from May 20 to Tuesday to 1,212, more than 2.5 times the number reported during the same period last year. Heat-related illnesses, the most common types being heat stroke and heat exhaustion, typically occur after prolonged exposure to high temperatures and can cause symptoms such as headaches, muscle cramps, and even impaired consciousness. So it was also revealed that in Seoul, many heat-related illnesses occurred during the morning hours, in particular in outdoor recreation spaces like sports fields and parks. So Ki-yoon, have you ever experienced symptoms of heat exhaustion or dehydration, and how do you personally stay safe during this extreme heat?
I think I have. Recently, with the extreme heat, I did feel a bit more fatigued than my normal other days. To stay safe from the heat, I try to limit my outdoor activities as much as I can, especially during the day because it is the hottest. But I do go for a light jog during nighttime to get my body moving and keeping healthy, because it is easy to get sick, especially staying under the air conditioner throughout the day. So I try to go for like a light jog or a walk during nighttime. Luckily, I picked up a good habit of drinking at least 2 liters of room temperature water every day. Now, as much as it may sound really easy, it's actually quite difficult to pick up the habit of drinking at least 2 liters of room temperature water. And just for your information, room temperature water is actually better for hydration than ice cold water because it is absorbed faster into the bloodstream, making it more efficient for hydration.
So I actually didn't know this recently about how ice cold water is, actually room temperature water is better than ice cold water, but apparently it's because your body spends a little extra time and energy bringing it up to your internal temperature, which slightly slows down absorption. So while cold water might feel more refreshing at the moment, like you said, room temperature water gets into your system quicker and helps you actually hydrate more efficiently. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yes, I do have some experience. I have indeed experienced those symptoms of dehydration, particularly when, spending extended periods outdoors in this boiling weather. I often feel dizzy and thirsty in such conditions, especially when I'm on a diet. And so in order to remain safe during extreme heat weather, I always take a parasol with me, and when I go outside, and I carry a bottle of iced water, even though Ki-yoon prefers the room temperature water. I sip from it regularly to ensure I stay well hydrated. And the best way to beat the heat is don't meet it. In extreme weather heat, I simply stay in and stay with my AC.
I think that's the most realistic advice. Just stay in under the AC.
Indeed, indeed.
That's how you can stay safe, yeah. So these rising numbers serve as a reminder of how dangerous the heat can be, especially as we face a record-breaking heat wave this summer. So hopefully the tips and stories that we share today can help people watching stay safe and spot the warning signs early. And that concludes our keyword news for this Thursday. So as we head into the final stretch of the work week, we're diving into a topic that hits close to home for many Gen Zs searching for smart ways to save amid rising prices. So let's take a look at the screen to learn more. Consumer prices continue to be a concern, especially as the cost of certain food items has surged, becoming a key driver of inflation worries. While overall inflation remained relatively stable in the first half of this year, rising just over 2% compared to the same period last year, prices of certain food categories such as livestock products and processed foods saw sharper increases. And this has given rise to frugal living trends, particularly among Gen Z, who are embracing a save now, spend later mindset and practicing a thrifty, strategic approach to saving. Today on News Generation, we're taking a closer look at how young people are changing the way they save and spend. As we just saw in the video, rising prices are affecting everyone's wallets these days. So to help us understand how people, especially younger generations, are handling big purchases in this economy, let's start off with a personal question. Juyeon, with prices rising across the board, how do you approach making big purchases these days? And are there any strategies or changes in mindset that you have adopted?
Well, I usually use those interest-free options, installments, especially for big items like TV. And if there is a no interest option, I go for the longest plan available, like 6 months, and it spreads out the cost of it and even helps me my credit score. So I sometimes do this even for smaller purchases in order to increase my credit card score. And when it comes to travel, I try to save in advance through a savings plan. It turns out that planning ahead makes spending feel lighter, not stressful, especially for things like travel, such as booking flights and accommodation at hotels. If there are extra budgets, benefits for paying in full, I prefer that, and it all depends on the situation, but I try to choose the option that makes the most financial sense. It's all about being smart with your money.
You mentioned how a great tip is to plan ahead, especially for trips.
Yes.
And I really felt that this wasn't a personal trip, it was a work trip to MWC in Barcelona. So I ended up having to book accommodations around 2 months, just 2 months in advance. And I think it was also because it was an international event. So availability was also very limited, but it was definitely really hard to find things within our budget.
Right.
So definitely planning things as early as possible is a great tip also. So what about you, Kyun?
I actually don't own a credit card and have no plans to own one in the near future. And the main reason is not wanting to live with the feeling of being in debt and having to pay back money every month. But when I do need to buy an expensive item that I cannot afford with cash on hand, I actually use up money saved up in a separate savings account. And a few years ago, I actually used to invest my savings, extra cash, into stocks, to buying shares. But what I realized was it was really difficult to sell these stocks immediately when I needed liquid cash, especially when you're losing money. Or when you're actually making a profit, it makes it even more difficult to sell the money because you want to actually earn more money. So I just realized, instead of just investing all my spare money into stocks, why don't I just save it up in a separate savings account and just pull out the money whenever I need it.
Right, I think having a savings buffer instead of just relying on credit card might help you feel actually more secure as well. So we're also seeing Gen Zs and millennials shift their approach when it comes to major expensive. Juyeon, could you share how their spending habits have changed?
Of course. Well, I think you're familiar with these buzzwords like YOLO, you only live once, and me economy, which is a spending habit, spending style that focuses on personal satisfaction over price. These buzzwords define the spending habits of those in the 20s and 30s. Rather than fearing an uncertain future, many focused on present happiness, going for what feels right for them, not what's the cheapest. So it was kind of a mindset that resonated deeply with younger generations before, but now it's not like that. A new trend is emerging, that is save now, pay later, the opposite of buy now, buy later, short for BNPL. So while BNPL made it easy to purchase without worrying about credit scores or interest, it often encouraged impulsive spending and led to growing personal debt. As far as that is concerned, it was never truly sustainable. So in response, more young people are turning to a more responsible alternative. So save first, spend later, and smile later when you see your bank account.
So it sounds like people are kind of redefining, especially young people are redefining what financial freedom really means to them. So can you tell us what's driving the shift, Kyun?
Look, the economic outlook is bleak and inflation is very high at the moment. In fact, the number of job openings per job seeker is at its lowest since the 1998 financial crisis. Furthermore, particularly among the people in their 20s, job retention rates are really low, making employment highly unstable. Although post-payment options like BNPL and installment payments are available, uncertainty around repayment is driving attention toward the save first, pay later approach. Of course, there are limitations. Since it takes time to actually save before making a purchase, this method may be less appealing to consumers who prioritize instant gratification. Additionally, prices may rise during the saving period, making the eventual purchase even more expensive in the end.
So considering the pros and cons, which approach to saving money do you think personally you find the most appealing, Hyun?
I guess for people in their 20s and 30s, save first, pay later approach seems like the more appropriate way to actually save and spend money compared to the older age group. The younger people obviously have a relatively lower income and financial limitations, so it's wise to spend within your capabilities by gaining a better understanding of how you're spending your money and also managing your spending habits because we need that kind of experience. So right now, impulsive buying is something that's very common among the younger people because we have less experience and we want instant satisfaction and gratification. But we later realize, oh no, I cannot pay back. And you're in debt and you're in bigger trouble and you ask for help from people around you, which just spirals into worse things. So I think being wise and being able to control and manage your spending habits is really important at a young age.
Right, it's really about like controlling that impulse in that moment, which sounds easy, but in that moment you really want that whatever is trending. It's really hard to stop yourself from.
I'll give you a tip later on on how to hold back your impulses.
I look forward to that. So, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I reckon it really depends on situation, whatever it is. Well, if something is essential and there is a limited time offer, it feels like it's wasteful to miss out. In those cases, I'm happy to make the purchase, especially if it's a smart deal, smart choice for you. But at the same time, I do value planning ahead and saving when I can. As I mentioned before, it's almost time to admit that being prepared doesn't mean missing out something. So for me, it's about finding the right balance between being practical and being prepared. You're not being stingy, you are being strategic this time.
Right, so at a time when wallets feel tight and priorities must be carefully set, many people are rethinking how and where they spend their money. So to get a better sense of what matters the most to our audience, we reached out to our viewers on the Arirang News YouTube channel and asked, what would you still save up for and treat yourself to now and then despite the need to be frugal? And here are the answers we received. So 53% of people said they would save up to travel, making it the most popular choice. Hobbies came next at 22%, followed by culinary treats like dining out or special meals at 16%. The remaining 9% chose other ways to treat themselves. So it's clear that even with limited budgets, people are still carving out room for things that bring them joy or meaning. Chuyeon, what are some of the key changes we're seeing in the everyday spending habits of millennials and Gen Zs, though?
Well, we are certainly seeing some clear shift at this time. Gen Z consumers are now focusing on ultra low prices for everyday essentials and turning away from luxury items. In fact, last year, department store spending by people in their 20s and 30s dropped by 5.6%. Meanwhile, spending at discount shops like Daiso rose by 12%, and budget cafes also saw an increase. It shows that people now care more about practical things. Everyday spending and luxury is no longer top of mind. It's all about smart saving and value for money now.
Right, I can also relate to that too, because stores like Daiso, they've offered it seems like the same types of things at a cheaper price. For example, they've started selling like vitamins as well. And usually vitamins are really expensive too, so I think that's why people are turning to those more cheaper options.
That's right.
Especially when things feel really expensive. But that doesn't mean younger generations have completely stopped treating themselves. So what does treating yourself look like for Gen Z and millennials these days, Kyun?
So it is said that the trend of fandom spending is growing stronger among millennials and Gen Zs. What I mean by fandom is basically it means a community of fans who are deeply devoted to a person, a group, subject, or any form of entertainment. So occasionally young people rewarding themselves with purchases regardless of the price while spending the bare minimum on a daily basis is bringing optimal satisfaction and sustainable consumption behavior among youngsters. So this is called fandom spending.
So this is why I feel like this fandom culture is also taking off because for these people, it's still really expensive. So especially for people like who are trying to cut down spending for like fandom culture, they still are spending a lot. So that's interesting too. So to hear more about today's spending trends, we'll be speaking with a business professor. And that's coming out right after the break, so stay tuned.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Pang Min-jung, Professor of Business Administration at Kumo National Institute of Technology. Hi, Professor. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
So how does the spending behavior of those in their 20s and 30s differ from that of older generations, like people in their 60s or 70s?
Yeah, so we also showed that in Korea, the spending has declined across all generations in these days, but the patterns all look so different, depends on their ages. The first, older people in their 60s and 70s usually keep their spending steady because they have assets like pensions and housing, and that provide financial stability. So many have paid off mortgages and receive regular pension payments. They are less affected by sudden income shocks. But in contrast, that it means different from older ages. People in their 20s and 30s nowadays face living costs, stagnant wages, and job insecurity, which all contribute to limited disposable income and greater financial anxiety. So like rising house costs and education expenses and the burden of student loans further constrain their budgets. So finally, it means as a result that they tend to reduce spending on big ticket or luxury items and instead focus on affordable and practical choices that deliver good value for money to them in the long time. So they also these days rely on heavily sharing information online and comparing reviews and tapping much value in peer recommendations to spend wisely and avoid unnecessary financial risks. So we can conclude that yes, financial standing has declined for all generations, but the different ages patterns are different. They depends on their ages.
I understand.
Yes.
Then what's driving these changes in millennial and Gen Z spending habits? What's behind that? Is it driven more by their fear or by a sense of responsibility?
Yes, this millennial and Gen Z spending behavior today is shaped by a combination of economic anxiety, as I said before, and a conscious of sense of responsibility, but this responsibility plays a stronger role. Many younger people face unstable jobs and high housing costs and student debt and slow wage growth, which naturally generates anxiety and cautious about spending. However, rather than passively reaching out of fear, they actively embrace responsibility by adopting deliberate spending strategies. They more carefully much value on purchases, choosing items that genuinely enhance their daily lives. So, important factor driving this responsible behavior is that their extensive use of digital information. Also, I said that, and also peer reviews and peer recommendations are different. Their responsibility and they feel anxiety and fear for their spending, and it makes some decline for their spending in these days.
Professor, just briefly, does the save first, pay later approach encourage more responsible spending?
Yes, the save first and buy later, spending later mindset generally does encourage a much value and more responsible spending, but especially in today's uncertain income climate, by choosing to save before making purchases, and people are forced to plan ahead and elevate and evaluate all their needs more carefully and avoid impulsive spending, and also spending there could lead to debt. So for younger generation facing unstable incomes and high living costs, this approach acts as a form of their discipline over time. So this discipline often extends to other areas too, like standing and setting long-term financial goals and building emergency funds. So you can conclude that these fear and responsibility habits are very extensive and extensive characteristics in 20s and 30s, their spending habits.
I see. Thank you so much for sharing your insight with us today, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we just heard from a professor of business who gave us some insights into how young people are adjusting their spending habits in response to rising prices and shifting priorities. Now, to wrap up our discussion for today, Chuyeon, how do you feel about this shift in the way younger generations are spending and saving? How is it similar or different from your own spending habits?
Well, as you mentioned before, we are seeing this clear shift in how we spend money and save these days. So living within your means is a smart choice, smart habit. And honestly, it's something many of us try to stick to. And this is at the heart of the matter. In truth, it's less about grand financial plans and more about making sensible choices day by day.
So this can feel really daunting, but I think what you said about making sensible choices day by day seems more easy to do. What are your thoughts on this, Kyun?
One tip I would like to share is to add all the things you want into a shopping cart and leave it for about 2 or 3 weeks. And during those 2-3 weeks, think about all the reasons why you actually need these items. And you'll come to realize that eventually you don't actually need any of those items because you've realized that they are wants, not needs. So being able to differentiate what you need and what you want will help you become a smarter consumer.
Right, that sounds hard to do, but I think that is a very good tip as well.
Practical tip.
Very practical, yes. So as prices continue to rise while salaries feel stagnant, it's clear that younger generations aren't just tightening their belts, they're redefining what it means to spend with intention and purpose. So whether it's saving for travel, small indulgences, or simply peace of mind, the shift isn't just about cutting back, it looks like it's about spending with purpose. So this brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation, but News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Big thanks to Chuyeon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you
Always a pleasure.
for joining us today, and to all our viewers, thanks for watching, and we hope you have the best day. We are News
News Generation.